In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court has struck down the Trump-era tariffs, signaling a major shift in American trade policy. This isn't just about import duties. It's a rebalancing of presidential power and a reset for U.S. economic strategy. Wall Street responded with optimism. Markets surged, especially in industries dependent on global supply chains. The removal of tariffs is seen as a stimulus, promising lower costs for manufacturers and eventually consumers. Yet, unwinding these barriers will take time. The case hinged on Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which gave presidents broad authority to impose tariffs for national security. The court ruled this was an overreach, reaffirming that Congress, not the president, holds the power to regulate commerce. This decision reasserts legislative authority and curtails unilateral executive action on trade. Future administrations will need to work with Congress, likely leading to more stable, deliberative trade policy. The era of tariffs as a go-to foreign policy tool may be over. The world is watching. Will the U.S. return to a rules-based order or chart a new course? For now, the message is clear. Trade policy is back in Congress's hands. The next chapter for American trade begins now. Trump's tariffs marked a sharp break from decades of free trade, targeting steel, aluminum, and a vast array of Chinese goods. The goal? Protect U.S. industries, shrink the trade deficit, and pressure China. The Supreme Court's decision sent stocks soaring in sectors hit hardest by tariffs: automotive, tech, and construction. Companies now anticipate lower costs and improved competitiveness. For example, a major automaker estimates saving over $1 billion annually with the tariffs gone. But dismantling the tariff system is complex. Customs guidance must change, contracts must be renegotiated, and retaliatory tariffs from other countries must be addressed. Some nations may lift their duties quickly, others will want formal negotiations. Meanwhile, U.S. firms that benefited from protection now face renewed global competition. Many had shifted supply chains away from China. Now those costly moves may be reconsidered. The economic experiment is over, but its aftershocks will linger. The transition period will be marked by uncertainty, even as optimism grows. American businesses must adapt quickly to a new, more open market reality. The end of tariffs is a relief for many, but not all. The debate over protectionism versus free trade is far from settled. The lessons of this era will shape U.S. trade for years to come. The Trump administration justified tariffs on national security grounds, invoking a Cold War-era law. The idea, a strong domestic steel and aluminum industry, is vital for defense. But the policy was also driven by economic nationalism, aimed at reviving U.S. manufacturing and reducing the trade deficit. Tariffs became a political tool, resonating with communities hit by industrial decline. They were also used as leverage in international negotiations, especially with China, to address issues like intellectual property theft and market access. This marked a shift from multilateral diplomacy to direct economic confrontation. The tariffs challenged the post-1-2 global order, signaling a willingness to act unilaterally. Allies saw this as a break from established norms. The approach questioned the benefits of globalization, favoring a protectionist, nation-first model. The Supreme Court's decision now forces a reconsideration of these strategies. The U.S. must balance security, economic interests, and global cooperation in a new way. Tariffs protected some U.S. metal producers but raised costs for manufacturers and consumers across the board. For every job created in steel and aluminum, many more were lost elsewhere due to higher input prices and retaliatory tariffs. Consumers paid more for everyday goods, effectively facing a new tax. The impact was regressive, hitting lower and middle-income families hardest. Internationally, tariffs strained relationships with key allies, who responded with their own duties on iconic American products. This tit-for-tat escalation damaged diplomatic ties and complicated cooperation on global issues. The uncertainty from trade disputes slowed global investment and growth. The World Trade Organization was sidelined as the U.S. acted unilaterally. Global supply chains were disrupted, forcing companies to rethink sourcing and investment. The result? A more fragmented, unpredictable global economy. The costs of protectionism were widely felt, while the benefits were narrowly concentrated. The Supreme Court's ruling aims to reverse this fragmentation. The Supreme Court's decision is rooted in the Constitution's separation of powers. The majority opinion emphasized that Congress, not the president, regulates foreign commerce. While some authority can be delegated, Congress cannot abdicate its core responsibility. The court found the Trump administration's use of national security as a catch-all for tariffs was an overreach. The law's original intent was to ensure wartime capacity, not to serve as a tool for broad economic protectionism. Applying tariffs to allies and consumer goods stretched the law beyond its limits. This ruling checks the steady expansion of executive power in trade. It signals that Congress must play a more active, precise role in trade policy. The judiciary will now scrutinize national security claims more closely, especially when they have major economic impacts. This precedent could reshape executive power far beyond trade. Industries reliant on imports like autos and construction are the big winners, with lower costs and renewed competitiveness. The steel and aluminum sectors, once shielded by tariffs, now face tough global competition and are urging Congress for new protections. The broader business community largely supports the court's decision, seeing tariffs as harmful and unpredictable. Their focus now is on smooth implementation and new trade agreements to open markets for U.S. exports. Different sectors have conflicting priorities. Tech wants stability, agriculture wants lost markets back, and some manufacturers want targeted protections. The debate over the future of U.S. trade policy is just beginning. The challenge balancing open markets with strategic support for key industries. The Supreme Court's ruling has set the stage for a contentious policy debate. The next steps will shape America's economic direction for years. The path forward is uncertain, but the old playbook is gone. The U.S. must now find a new balance between openness and protection. America's allies welcome the Supreme Court's decision, seeing it as a chance to repair strained relationships. The EU called it a victory for the rules-based order. Canada and Japan signaled readiness to lift retaliatory tariffs. For allies, the tariffs were a breach of trust. Removing them opens the door to renewed cooperation. China's response was cautious, using the decision as leverage in ongoing talks but remaining skeptical of U.S. intentions. The ruling also offers hope for global trade institutions like the WTO, which had been sidelined by U.S. unilateralism. Other countries hope the U.S. will re-engage and help reform the WTO for modern challenges. Despite relief, uncertainty remains. Global partners know American skepticism toward globalization hasn't vanished. They worry future U.S. leaders could pursue new forms of protectionism. The world is watching to see if the U.S. is truly committed to open trade or just pausing before the next shift. The end of tariffs is a step forward, but trust must be rebuilt. The U.S. must prove its commitment to cooperation not just in words, but in action. The global trading system is at a crossroads. The next moves will determine its future. With tariffs gone, the U.S. faces the challenge of managing a smooth transition and rebuilding trust with allies. The shift of trade authority back to Congress means policymaking will be slower and more contentious. Building bipartisan coalitions will be essential for new trade agreements. The administration must find new tools to address issues like Chinese subsidies and intellectual property theft. Broad tariffs are out, targeted strategic measures are in. Working with allies, using the WTO, and deploying precise domestic tools will be key. The U.S. now has a chance to lead in modernizing global trade rules for the digital age and new economic realities. By championing fair, sustainable trade, America can rebuild its leadership role. The opportunity move beyond recent conflicts and shape a new era of global economic integration. The challenge crafting policies that are both internationally effective and politically sustainable at home. The next chapter in U.S. trade begins with collaboration, not confrontation. The Supreme Court's decision is a turning point, shifting trade power back to Congress and ending an era of economic nationalism. The immediate effect relief for many industries, but new challenges for some. The ruling forces a return to a more traditional, collaborative approach to trade. The U.S. must now find new ways to compete globally, especially with China, without relying on broad tariffs. The debate over trade's role in the economy and national security is more prominent than ever. This moment doesn't settle the future, it opens a new debate. The question, will America return to free trade orthodoxy or forge a new balanced path? The world and Congress are watching for the answer.